Gallant Venture War Room. Maximilian Usurek cupped a glass with grace as he brought it up to his lips, the white liquid touching his lips for a second before he greedily drank from it for a few seconds until the glass was emptied. As he set the glass down on the table, a servant approached carrying a large ornate jug before pouring more of that same white liquid into his glass. When it was done, the servant moved back to avoid causing his master any inconvenience. The lone wolf quietly and quickly scanned the room, ignoring the servants present to focus on those that mattered. Across the table sat Javier Wunder, his eyes fixated on a datapad while an untouched cup of fine wine sat before him. Casimir Caiston sat to his left. The young was unable to hide the smile that spread across his lips, more than likely due to the results the open negotiations had yielded. To his right sat Felicity Centaur, who was, understandably so, elated beyond measure given the radiant and smug aura surrounding her. He drank from his glass again, suppressing a chuckle in the process. As he put his glass down, they all received the signal they'd been waiting for. "The Samuel's Glory is leaving dock," Casimir said. "Right on the expected time. It seems that Genak was unable to conjure the support he needed." "I wouldn't be so sure just yet," Javier countered. "Let us wait and see their heading before we take action." Silently, everyone agreed as the center of the table split open to reveal several projectors that quickly displayed a holographic representation of the system. Quickly zooming to Balakura and its immediate area of influence, the stations and themselves, represented by a group of 6 green dots, were immediately identified. Similarly, the captured Samuel's Glory also appeared, represented by a single purple dot. Javier pressed a single finger on his datapad, and the large screen in the room came to life, showing the nearly pitch-black hull of the Samuel's Glory slowly rotating as it moved away from the station. After what felt like an eternity of waiting, the ship's engines came to life, showcasing a faint light, pushing it forth to its new destination. "They know we're watching," he commented, frowning, "and yet they're heading, computer, calculate its possible exit vectors out of the system in accordance to its current heading." "Calculating," the AI replied, and 2 seconds later the holographic map was painted with over 3 dozen red lines that led to possible exit vectors and jump points. Javier put his datapad down and hummed deeply. "They're not heading back to Finnegan territory. None of those jump points would lead them back to their space. Could it be a distraction? Maybe a trap or a trick of misdirection?" Casimir proposed. "The Reaper doesn't strike me like the sort to rely on such things without good reason. If I were her, I would crawl back the way I came and then shift direction after 2 or 3 jumps," Maximilian answered, eyes narrowing and a cocky smirk spread across his lips. "Shame we can't deploy spy drones or send a probe after them. Well, we can, but not in neutral space." "That doesn't mean we can't go where we please or keep an eye on them," Casimir countered. "And the same applies to them. Where do you think they're heading, Javier?" "It is too early to draw any real conclusions, but if their trajectory aligns to any of these 4 routes," he said, and all but 4 red lines vanished, all of them heading up on the tri-dimensional map, "then it is highly probable that their destination will be the Hastrung system." "The prince does not have the strength to spare in aiding a house of cowards," Felicity countered, her smile never faltering. "We have not received a warning, so Genak has not bent the knee. The Reaper may be a poisonous viper pretending to be a songbird, but even she can't force the head of a house to submit to her desires out of hand." "If that's the case, then why isn't she returning to her brother?" Casimir asked, unsure. "If they're heading to the Hastrung system, they will be outmatched by the Drazen infesting it." Javier cut the young man off with a dismissive gesture. "At least 3 entire raiding fleets entered the system. Granted, we don't know how big those fleets are, but a single ship can't hope to face such strength in battle and survive it. I doubt that even a battleship could achieve such a feat, let alone an assault destroyer. The moment they enter the system, the warp signature of their arrival will alert the Xenos that enemies have come." "A moot point. The Samuel's Glory can simply hide after their arrival," Casimir protested. "Ah," Maximilian chuckled. "But the plants will know an enemy is present and they'll be on alert. Say what you will about the Drazen, but they're not stupid. Stupid species don't build spaceships," he declared with humor before drinking some more of his beverage. Then is it a trick? An attempt to fool us? Casimir asked, crossing his arms. Maximilian shrugged and hummed deeply. Let us imagine for a moment that the princess is truly heading to Hastrung. What is she hoping to achieve? A direct battle is unlikely. For all her reputation, I doubt she's a good commander. Despite her ego, I honestly cannot see her sitting in the captain's chair, which must mean that a competent high-ranking officer is acting as her XO. A commodore is unlikely. A rear or vice admiral, perhaps. A commander, quite possible. But who? He drank the rest of his beverage, and again the servant approached to refill his glass. The answer is obvious. Redford Kalin or Juliana Winfield are the only two real candidates worth consideration. I see your point. The prince wouldn't allow anyone but someone he places a considerable amount of trust in such a position. With his limited roster of capable Royal Navy officers, there really isn't another choice but one of them, Javier mused, taking his datapad. After poking at it for a few seconds, the screen split in half, with the left still showing the Samuel's glory, while the right showcased a still image of a man that caused Felicity to tilt her head in amusement. With the subject of trust and all that it carries, I am far more worried about this man, this Wyatt Staples. How so? Isn't he just an elevated commoner? Asked Casimir, eyebrow raised. I was led to believe that was the case, but look closely. Notice anything different? Javier questioned. Felicity was the first to reply. That image. This is from that joke of a royal procession, is it not? Javier nodded. His eyes are brown there, but the ones that we saw were heterochromatic. Surely he received eye gene enhancement. Her answer was simple and matter-of-factly, but just as she was about to dismiss the issue entirely, the remark made by Maximilian assaulted her mind once more. What does it take for an unknown man to gain the favor of royalty? An unknown man, she carried on, her voice losing the edge of smugness and humor it had carried ever since the negotiations ended. Javier, are you implying that the prince himself trusts this commoner? I wouldn't go to such extremes, Felicity, but there is a measure of it put on that man. The Reaper is a paranoic that doesn't allow anyone to approach at a distance closer than an arm's length. And yet this man stands next to her much like that accursed blue-haired demon does. Javier paused for a moment, tapping his chin with his left middle finger for several seconds. You said he showed no interest in you despite your attempts at erotism. Could it be that this Wyatt Staples is merely a pleasure toy the whore fancies? Felicity snorted at the idea. Not once did he show interest in my figure, Javier, but he was flustered at my closeness. So it is safe to say that he does not find men attractive. He is by no means unappealing, but I wouldn't define him as particularly handsome either. The aura of defiance and focus around him is intriguing, and I could see any lesser noble lady entertaining the idea of bedding such a man. Then again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Reaper fancies such bestial men. You two are idiots, Maximilian added with a wide grin spread across his lips. Or perhaps are you merely blind? Ah, I was wondering when your insulting tongue would be unleashed, Maximilian, Felicity countered. Javier sighed while Casimir listened carefully. And this is why I hate soldiers, imbeciles with no tact, no brains, and no sense of respect. I should consider reporting your actions as suspect for treason, Usurek, to entertain the request of that sordid wench. What were you thinking? Oh, apologies. You need a functioning brain to achieve such a feat. Maximilian drank from his glass before replying. Be careful, Wunder. I can tolerate many things, but blatant insults do dry my well of mercy rather quickly. Unless you wish to return to your house missing a limb or inside a casket, I suggest you shut your mouth and apply that same respect you demand onto your betters. Javier sneered at the lone wolf but kept his mouth tightly shut for the time being. We are allies, like it or not, Javier. We serve his Lord Regent together, not divided. Cease your petty squabbles. Javier said nothing at Felicity's retort whilst Maximilian merely smirked. Now, Maximilian, explain yourself and do not speak in pointless riddles. For an observant woman, Felicity, you seem to not notice what is right in front of you. That man Wyatt Staples? He's a dangerous one and you didn't see it, he explained and drank from his glass again. I believe his shameful debacle, whilst impressive, was already proof enough of that, Javier retorted. Have you ever killed someone? Maximilian asked, his voice losing all sense of easygoing and humorous tone. Everyone, including the servants and the maids, shuddered in response. I have. Plenty of times. With my own hands and whilst looking into the eyes of my enemies, too. It takes guts and cold blood to kill someone. Even killing a no-name commoner or a worthless pirate is harder than you may believe. There's a huge difference between killing someone as you stare at them and simply ordering the demise of your enemies. And that man? Maximilian asked, letting out a bellowing, deep, dark chuckle. He'd kill us without remorse or a second thought if we were in his sights, unleashed by the woman that fitted a collar around his neck. And after seeing him in person, I don't believe there's not a collar at all. That's not that impressive, Casimir said, regaining his composure. You would kill anyone that House Centaur tells you to kill. True, Maximilian admitted. However, little Caiston, I'm a lone wolf. I'm a trained killer, among other things. What the fuck does that even make him if it takes 4 Royal Marines to restrain him? He either got eye gene enhancement or his brown eyes were always a facade. His precision was to be lauded, and his loyalty to the princess is unquestionable. Who is this man? Where did he come from? He asked, shaking his head slowly. When I stared into his eyes, I saw a void. No anger, no fear, no doubt, just a pit of darkness that stared back at me. Then we should eliminate him, Felicity proposed, and eliminate the Reaper if she is heading to the Hastrung system. Are you insane? Casimir protested. If we attack the Samuel's Glory whilst in Ferentis territory, all of our efforts will sink to ruin, not to mention that when the prince learns of his sister's demise, our houses will suffer the consequences. Angry men make mistakes, Felicity countered. We want him angry. If the whore dies by our hands, the Lord Regent will reward us handsomely for removing such a pesky fly from his sight. That arrogant prince will try to avenge his sister, waste his precious ships, lose supporters, and likely break with tradition and laws. Our Lord Regent needs not to kill the prince to achieve his victory. A tarnished reputation will suffice once he is shown to be the incompetent beast he truly is. It's not an impossible idea, Maximilian added. If battle is to be had in a fallen system, then no dishonor shall befall upon us since Hastrung does not belong to House Ferentis, he said, and the holographic display zoomed out to reveal the star systems controlled by House Ferentis. One black blotch could be seen, marked simply as abandoned, the Hastrung system. Let us entertain such a thought, Javier continued as Casimir leaned back on his seat and Maximilian was served another glass of his white beverage. We can't simply follow them. Not now. We need space to play in our favor to remain concealed. How do you propose we'll avoid detection during jumps? We'll follow other ships or bribe jump-capable ships and act as escorts, Felicity answered. Convoys are common enough to not raise suspicion if the number is 10 or more. They will be expecting 6 simultaneous jump signatures. 10? A dozen? Not so much. Less so amidst several other ships entering the systems constantly. We'll be several hours behind them, but that won't be a problem. We know where they are headed if indeed the wench is planning on liberating the system herself. If she changes course, then we can safely return to our original mission. Otherwise, the pressing issue is our firepower. Our Corvus frigates and the gallant Venture won't stand a chance against the Samuel's Glory, said the tall, thin man, not in a direct battle. If the princess wishes to charge against the Drazen and whatever rebel and pirate scum is left in that accursed system, then I say we let them fight. We can send several probes as we wait on a nearby system to spy on the battle. If they achieve victory, then they won't achieve it unscathed. The Samuel Glory will be running hot. Even with several hours at their disposal, they won't be able to hide or make repairs fast enough. If they get killed by the Drazen, then that saves us the work. If they try to escape, we'll deliver the finishing blow. Maximilian chuckled. Our best-case scenario is if they achieve total victory or if they leave the invaders crippled whilst they are severely wounded themselves. We can enter the system, destroy the remnants, and claim 2 victories, the death of the Reaper and the favor of House Ferentis. Wait. Instead of destroying the ship, perhaps we can recapture it. Take prisoners? I need to know what happened to Samuel. His parents, my uncle and aunt, and the rest of my cousins deserve to know what became of him, Casimir proposed. I'd rather not take such chances in person, Maximilian replied. I can perhaps stand up against a Royal Marine if I'm careful, but the blood rend. I will not put my life at risk for your sake, little Caiston. Casimir opened his mouth, but clearly thought better than to argue against the lone wolf. Closing his mouth, he gave a solemn nod. Suddenly, Felicity stood up, and her maid stood at attention. "Lady Felicity, our course of action has been decided. We shall not waste this opportunity. If their goal is not the liberation of that fallen system, then we lose nothing, for we have already won," answered the black-haired woman. "As potentially dangerous as Wyatt Staples may be, his idiocy, incompetence, and frank honesty have cost the Reaper dearly. I have defeated her. Without Ferentis supply lines, their mobility shall be hampered, and we gain another angle of attack to strike against the prince and those loyal to him. We failed in gaining the support of House Ferentis," Casimir pointed out. "What real choice does Geenock and his line of cowards have? They will barter their most precious and abundant resources to us. Other neutral houses may buy their resources yet, but the exorbitant price they will demand from House Astor will be a net benefit for us. Every road before shall guide us to our victory. The Reaper has lost. I won. I defeated her. She's not infallible," she said, and began to make her way out of the room with long, slow steps, drinking in her own victory. "Now I will retire. I must rest. Javier, inform Captain Ciro of our decision and prepare for our departure." "As you command," Javier replied as he returned his attention to his datapad. Soon, Felicity was gone, and the three men still sitting at the table shared a long moment of silence, broken only when Maximilian drank from his glass. "It is indeed our victory." "Pardon?" Casimir asked curiously. "It is as Felicity said. We cornered that wretched animal into a corner and left her with no room to maneuver. Our victory was deserved and planned, yet hard fought. We were ready to counter her regardless, but the blunder from her simpleton gave us some precious information we required," he grumbled, tapping on his datapad. Not content with that, the Reaper insulted Felicity, openly. It was her mistake to place any amount of trust in a lowly, inbred commoner. If he survives whatever torturous punishment his idiocy cost the princess, I care not for it. Her barely contained fury was most certainly a death sentence anyway, he finished with a deep, pensive hum instead of gloating some more. His eyes narrowed, ignoring the expecting Casimir. The Caiston sighed a few seconds later upon realizing Javier had shifted his focus somewhere else. His eyes turned to Maximilian, who was impossibly being served yet another glass of his strange white beverage. "What are you drinking? You've been drinking it ever since we came back. How are you not drunk or mildly inebriated yet?" He paused for a moment, as if recalling several short memories at once. "Come to think of it, I've never seen you drink anything other than that, water or tea." Maximilian smiled a bemused smile before making a quick gesture with his free hand. Instantly, another of his servants approached Casimir, put down a fresh glass before him, and filled it with the white substance. The lone wolf watched in silence, wondering what the young Caiston would do. Casimir stared at the offered glass, then at Maximilian, then at the glass again. Pushing his suspicion aside, he grabbed the pleasantly cold glass, brought it up to his mouth, sniffed it, and then took a sip from it. Rather impolitely, he smacked his lips and ran his tongue across them, surprised. He took a second, longer sip and audibly gulped the beverage down his throat. "It's sweet," said the young man in disbelief. "You will find not a single drop of alcohol in this drink," Maximilian answered. "This is nothing more than a refreshing drink produced in my homeworld. Nobles and commoners alike drink it, although this quality is reserved for the nobility, of course," he said with a little chortle. "It's delicious," Casimir admitted, drinking half his glass before continuing. "But why not drink wine instead?" "Because I can't," Maximilian answered without shame. "Or rather, I can easily drink wine or other alcoholic beverages, Morshel, spirits, Nulasando, Mucinex, Pasquilla. My family owns vast vineyards and entire industries dedicated to producing all sorts of non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverages. Truth be told, I was to take on my uncle's mantle and become a sommelier," he confessed as he let out a distant, mournless sigh. "I joined the Royal Navy as soon as I could, rose through the ranks, and earned my way to the position I am now at. Not that I do not appreciate you sharing your personal story, but what does this have to do with you being unable to drink wine?" Casimir asked before taking a large gulp from the refreshing drink. "It has everything to do with it, Casimir. When I was selected as a lone wolf candidate and later became one through effort and a rather substantial kill count of our dreaded enemies, I swore upon my honor as a sacrifice on my behalf to drink alcohol no more and forego the stimulus of recreational substances, Maximilian revealed, drinking some more of his beverage. You must renounce such things to become a lone wolf? Casimir asked, wounded, silently glancing at the untouched cup of wine, forgotten before the pensive Javier. Every lone wolf must sacrifice something dear to them as a pledge of honor. Some sacrifice riches, others sacrifice the pleasures of the flesh. A sacrifice has to be something with meaning or something you hold dear. Nothing but my oath prevents me from indulging in such activities again, for they were truly dear to me. Many lone wolves break their vows and oaths of sacrifice. I've been tempted, but I wouldn't be Maximilian the Roaring Thunder Usurek otherwise, now would I? To besmirch my honor for so little gain is inconceivable, little Caiston. Bersmich, your honor. I believe I understand, Casimir said, staring at his glass. Is that why you entertained the princess during the negotiations, gave her your autograph? Should I've refused such an earnest request? I may not hold the Reaper in high esteem, harbor any respect whatsoever for her, or consider her to be anything more than a dangerous tool with no master to control her. But I also hold no ill will toward her. What harm does it carry to give her something so trivial? It costs me nothing, and if the prince is to win this conflict, I may call upon her for salvation depending on the mood of that brother of hers. Casimir scoffed. You can't possibly believe that the Lord Regent will be defeated by his nephew. Maximilian shrugged. My contract binds me to House Centaur. Honor, fealty, and duty tie me to their orders. However, I am no fool. Blind loyalty leads to zealotry. Hear my advice, Casimir. Never believe yourself to be invincible, infallible, or incorruptible. The moment you do, your fall shall be monumental. To win a battle, first see yourself losing it. It will humble you, keep you focused. I see. Thank you, Maximilian, Casimir said, processing what the lone wolf had shared with him. Drinking the rest of his beverage, he turned to Javier. Javier, what do you believe? I believe in results, Javier answered, his expression serious as his eyes narrowed slightly. Tell me, Maximilian, are you at all familiar with the concept of a hollow victory? A Pyrrhic victory? Yes, had to go through it more than once, the tall, handsome man replied, his expression darkening for a split second. No, not a Pyrrhic victory. A Pyrrhic victory is still a victory, perhaps not worth it, but a victory nonetheless, Javier countered. A hollow victory is when you achieve a victory, regardless of how hard the battle was to achieve it, but it leaves you unfulfilled. A victory that does not appear to be won despite you've clearly won and achieved what you wished to achieve. He paused for a moment. Simply put, a victory that is hollow. Can't say I know what that feels like, Maximilian replied, raising an eyebrow. Why do you ask? Because that is how I'm feeling right now. We won, didn't we? We defeated the Reaper, deprived her of what she wanted, all but forced her into an act of desperation and near suicidal intent to liberate a system from the tentacles of those horrid Xenos. Felicity is right. This is our victory. His eyes turned to the map, following the purple dot as it slowly moved along the lines of one of the possible highlighted trajectories. So why do I feel hollow? No answer was found that day.